Imagine having, a vocabulary of 10,000 words, flawless grammar, and the ability to negotiate a really complex corporate merger in a second language.
Right.
But then you still feel like an absolute beginner because you just missed a sarcastic joke in the break room.
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time.
It really does. Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we are exploring the absolute final frontier of language acquisition. We are targeting C2 Fluency, which is that highest echelon of mastery where you're not just functionally fluent, but you are near native.
And it is a notoriously difficult threshold to cross.
Totally. The material we're analyzing today comes from a specialized language clinic that targets this exact threshold, and the mission is clear. Okay, let's unpack this. We are unpacking humor, wit, and the incredibly delicate, highly dangerous art of banter.
It is the final frontier for a reason. And, if you are listening to this and you've ever felt that specific burning frustration of a joke landing completely flat in a second language, you are definitely not alone.
Oh, it's the worst feeling.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because humor is this volatile mix. It relies on a deep, almost invisible web of cultural context, shared assumptions, and razor-sharp timing. The mechanics of a language, like the grammar, the vocabulary, those are just the rules.
Right, the baseline.
Exactly. But conversational humor is almost entirely about knowing exactly how, when, and with whom to break those rules.
I look at it a lot like learning to play the piano. When you're a beginner, there's this profound structural comfort in sheet music. You have the staff, the time signature, the notes.
Yes, it's very predictable.
Right, it's mathematical. You press a key, you get a sound. But stepping into conversational humor is like walking into a dimly lit club where people are playing jazz. The sheet music is just gone.
And you're forced to improvise.
Exactly. The musicians are communicating in this unspoken language of subtle nods, complex syncopation, and playing the notes that are not on the page. If you walk up to that stage and rigidly play your practice scales, it doesn't matter how technically perfect they are, you are not playing the room.
I love that analogy. And that transition from the mechanical safety of sheet music to the improvisational chaos of jazz is where the psychology of language learning takes a massive hit.
It really does.
The material we're looking at today highlights a profound psychological shift that happens in the brain when a joke fails. Think about the stakes.
They're surprisingly high.
They are. If you accidentally use the wrong verb tense during a formal presentation, your colleagues mentally correct it, and the meeting moves forward.
Yeah, nobody really cares.
Right, you retain your professional status. But when you miss a sarcastic cue in the break room, the entire dynamic shatters.
Because it's no longer a linguistic error, it becomes a social one.
Precisely. Humor is it's the ultimate evolutionary indicator of social belonging. Laughter actually evolved as an all-clear signal among early humans.
Wait, really? Like an alarm system?
Kind of the opposite of an alarm. It was a way to signal that a perceived anomaly wasn't actually a threat. So when you miss the joke, you are implicitly excluded from the in-group. You experience an immediate, visceral loss of social power.
Wow.
Yeah, it strips away the armor of your 10,000 memorized words and exposes a lack of cultural fluency.
Oh.
And biologically, the brain processes that social exclusion in the exact same areas that process physical pain.
Oh, so it literally hurts.
Literally. That is why it hurts so much more than a grammar mistake.
Which perfectly explains that feeling of instantaneous regression. Knowing the theory of a language but failing at the banter is essentially like memorizing the entire engineering schematic of a sports car.
Right.
You know the engine specs, you understand the torque, you can diagram the transmission, but you have never actually driven the vehicle on a crowded, chaotic highway during a rainstorm.
You don't have the feel for it.
Exactly. You possess the theoretical knowledge, but you completely lack the kinetic, real-world feel of the momentum.
And out on that highway, the vehicles people are driving do not look like the ones in your textbook.
They really don't.
No. If you want to understand why conversational humor is so disorienting, we have to look at the primary tools native speakers actually use. In British, Australian, and increasingly American conversational dynamics, the most prominent tool is one that deliberately strips away the very emotion we usually associate with humor.
Okay, you're talking about the architecture of deadpan.
Yes. Deadpan delivery, or dry humor. It is the act of delivering a joke, an ironic statement, or a sarcastic remark with a completely expressionless face and a flat, serious tone of voice.
Which is so hard to read.
It's incredibly hard. You intentionally suppress all the universal biological indicators of playfulness. No smiling, no raised eyebrows, no enthusiastic vocal inflection.
Which on a biological level feels incredibly hostile. I mean, if laughter is an all-clear signal, deadpan is the active suppression of that signal.
Spot on.
The source material walks through a classic office scenario to illustrate this, and I love this example. Imagine a colleague trips and dramatically drops a massive stack of paperwork. Papers are flying everywhere, coffee spills. It is a complete disaster.
Total chaos.
Right. An intermediate speaker, focusing on textbook politeness, says something like, "Oh no, are you okay?"
Which is perfectly functional. It addresses the situation.
Right, but a fluent C2 level speaker leveraging deadpan wouldn't rush to help or express alarm at all. They might calmly look at the catastrophic mess, take a slow, unhurried sip of their coffee, and state, "Well, that was graceful."
The mechanics of that moment are just fascinating to me, because the humor does not live in the vocabulary.
Right, graceful isn't a funny word.
No, the word graceful isn't inherently funny at all. The comedy lives entirely in the friction of the contrast. You have a vast canyon between the chaotic, clumsy reality of the physical space and the speaker's total, unwavering lack of emotional response to it.
But I have to stop you there, because isn't that inherently dangerous?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you remove the visual cues, if you refuse to smile or change your pitch, how does a person on the floor know you aren't just being a sadistic jerk? If I drop my life's work on the linoleum and you give me a dead-eyed stare and call it graceful, my instinct isn't to laugh. My instinct is that we have a serious interpersonal problem.
It is worse than dangerous. Without the right environmental variables, it is actively destructive to trust. And this is exactly why deadpan is a master-level skill. It relies entirely on a concept known as shared assumptions.
Shared assumptions.
Right. For that flat delivery to be recognized as a joke rather than an insult, both parties must possess a mutual unspoken agreement about the reality of the situation.
Meaning we both have to know that the situation is a disaster, and we both have to know that the other person knows it.
Exactly. It's a shared cognitive baseline. If the person who dropped the papers is genuinely distressed or crying or injured, the baseline is broken.
And then the remark is just cruel.
Exactly. The deadpan remark becomes incredibly cruel. If you do not know the person well enough to know they can handle the embarrassment, again, the baseline is broken.
So it's very context dependent.
Highly. Deadpan only functions when the objective reality is so overwhelmingly obvious that your verbal contradiction of it can only be interpreted as a deliberate, playful absurdity. You are trusting the listener's intelligence to bridge the gap between your flat tone and the chaotic room.
Okay, so deadpan relies on flattening your emotional response to a situation. But what happens when you flatten the actual reality of the situation itself? That moves us from deadpan delivery into the structural use of understatement, which honestly seems to be the absolute bedrock of this kind of fluency.
Oh, understatement is everywhere, particularly in English, where there's a cultural tendency to view overt displays of extreme emotion with, well, slight suspicion.
We see this all the time. The classic scenario is, okay, it's an absolute monsoon outside. Torrential rain, streets flooding, visibility is zero.
Nasty weather.
Yeah, completely nasty. Someone walks into the office absolutely drenched to the bone, water pooling around their shoes, and they casually declare, "It's a bit damp out there, isn't it?"
Yes. The cognitive load of that sentence is what makes it so powerful. When someone uses hyperbole, say they come in and yell, "It's a biblical flood out there." The speaker is doing all the heavy lifting.
Right, they're handing you the joke on a silver platter.
Exactly. They are scaling the emotion and handing it to the listener fully formed. But understatement is an inversion of effort. The speaker provides a microscopic description of a macroscopic event.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The listener is forced to do the computational work. They have to look at the dripping wet clothes, process the phrase "a bit damp," and mentally calculate the massive distance between the two.
But here is what I am wondering about that. By forcing the listener to do that mental calculation, does understatement actually build a stronger social bond than a straightforward joke?
How do you mean?
Well, because you aren't just giving them a punchline. You are handing them a puzzle. And when they solve it, they become a co-author of the joke.
That is precisely the sociological function of understatement. It is an invitation to cognitive collusion.
Cognitive collusion?
Yes.
Wow.
When the listener connects the dots, their brain receives a slight dopamine reward for solving the anomaly. You are signaling, hey, I respect your intelligence enough to know you don't need me to spell out how bad the weather is.
So it's a form of respect.
Very much so. That shared completion creates an instant microbond. You are establishing an in-group of two people who see the absurdity of the world and choose to master it by minimizing it.
So if understatement and deadpan are tools for building these intricate microbonds, what happens when that bonding mechanism is accelerated and weaponized?
Then you are entering the realm of banter.
Right. That crosses the boundary from a passive joke about the weather into interpersonal banter, or, as it's often framed in the sources, conversational tennis.
Banter is the ultimate stress test of a bilingual brain. It really is. It's the rapid-fire exchange of teasing, irony, and witty remarks. If deadpan is a tool, banter is the high-speed arena where you are forced to wield it while dodging incoming fire.
And the processing speed required here is staggering. I mean, it is not just language, it is light-speed data analysis.
Let's break down the literal neuroscience of a single volley of banter.
Let's do it.
Say someone lobs a sarcastic observation at you. In a fraction of a second, your auditory cortex processes the foams. Your semantic memory retrieves the literal definitions of the words. Then, your prefrontal cortex has to step in, recognize that the literal meaning doesn't match the context, scan for cultural subtext, and identify the irony.
All while your brain is operating in a second language, which already demands a higher baseline of cognitive overhead.
Right, and you haven't even responded yet.
Oh.
Once you decode the hidden meaning, you have to formulate your riposter, a counter-remark that matches their tone, acknowledges their hidden premise, and escalates the absurdity. And you must execute this in the span of a single breath.
Because if you pause
to translate or think, the rhythm dies, the rally is over, you've lost the game.
It is exactly like playing ping pong in the pitch black. You cannot rely on sight, or in this case, the explicit literal words. You have to anticipate the trajectory of the ball based entirely on the sound of the paddle, the rhythm of the game, and sheer instinct.
That's a perfect way to visualize it.
You're swinging at where the conversation is going to be, not where it currently is.
Which induces massive cognitive fatigue. It is exhausting to run that kind of predictive modeling constantly.
So why do we do it? I mean, if this high-speed linguistic tennis match is so stressful and the risk of catastrophic social failure is so incredibly high, why do humans subject themselves to it? Why not just speak clearly and directly all the time?
Because of the profound cultural paradox of mock hostility. In many cultures, direct politeness is actually a marker of distance.
Really? Politeness means you're not close.
Oftentimes, yes. If I am overly formal and polite to you, it signals that I am being careful. I'm protecting my boundaries because I am unsure of my standing with you.
Politeness as a defense mechanism.
Exactly. But banter teasing, taking the mickey as the British call it, giving someone a hard time, is the suspension of those defenses. You are playfully challenging someone to demonstrate that your relationship is robust enough to survive the friction.
Okay, I see.
You are signaling that you are secure enough in the friendship to simulate an attack without it being interpreted as an actual threat.
There is a scenario in the text that perfectly captures this paradox. You have a friend who is notoriously punctual, like obsessively on time.
Well, that friend.
Right. But for the first time in their life, they show up to dinner 2 minutes late. A polite acquaintance would say, "No problem, you're fine."
Which is safe.
Very safe. But a close friend, engaging in banter, gives a wry smile and says, "Glad you could finally find the time to join us."
Look at the architecture of that tease.
Yeah.
It is a deadpan delivery of a massive overstatement.
Yeah.
You are accusing them of profound negligence over a 120-second delay.
And the reason it acts as a bonding mechanism is that it relies entirely on a break in character. By making that specific accusation, you are implicitly proving how well you know them.
Yes.
You are saying, "I know your baseline personality is hyperpunctual, so I am going to shine a massive spotlight on this rare deviation." It is an insult wrapped around a deep, intimate acknowledgement of their identity.
It validates who they are while playfully attacking who they aren't. But this is exactly where the high wire act gets terrifying for a learner.
Because you're playing with fire.
You are playing with simulated aggression. And the line between simulated aggression and actual hostility is entirely subjective.
The danger zone. You misjudge the shared assumptions, your timing is off by half a second, or your pitch doesn't drop quite enough. Suddenly, the mock hostility is just hostility.
And everyone feels it.
The listener takes your deadpan accusation literally. The air leaves the room. It's awful. What do you do when you are in free fall like that?
You deploy a circuit breaker. When you realize a sarcastic remark has breached the bounds of play, you need language designed to immediately de-escalate the tension.
Like a safety valve.
Right. A common intermediate ripcord is saying something like, "I'm just pulling your leg," But at a highly advanced level, you see the deployment of very specific formal terminology to abort the mission. Specifically the phrase, "I'm just being facetious."
Okay, let's look at that word, facetious. It means treating a serious issue with deliberately inappropriate humor.
Correct.
But why does using a complex, multisyllabic, Latinate vocabulary word actually help in a moment of emotional tension? I mean, if I just offended you, doesn't pulling out an SAT-level vocabulary word make me sound arrogant or clinical? Why not just say, "I'm sorry, I was joking"?
That is a brilliant question, and it really gets at the mechanics of register. When you offend someone with banter, you are trapped in an emotional, highly volatile register of communication.
Right, everyone's feelings are on edge.
Exactly. If you just say, "I'm joking," it often sounds defensive, as if you are blaming them for not getting it.
Like saying, "Can't you take a joke?" Which just makes it worse.
So much worse. But the word facetious acts as a linguistic circuit breaker, precisely because it is clinical. By suddenly shifting to a formal, multisyllabic word, you forcibly jolt the conversation out of the emotional register and into a meta-communicative one.
Oh, that is fascinating.
You are stepping outside of the interaction to objectively label your own behavior. It is an act of conversational humility. You are conceding, "Hey, I attempted a complex rhetorical maneuver and I failed."
But the success of that circuit breaker still completely relies on tone, right?
Absolutely.
Because if I cross my arms, roll my eyes, and say, "I'm just being facetious," the clinical nature of the word suddenly turns it into a weapon. It sounds super condescending.
Tone is everything. The vocabulary is just the vehicle. The tone is the steering wheel. If you deploy facetious without genuine concession in your voice, it accelerates the hostility, which honestly proves the overarching thesis of this entire landscape. All the vocabulary in the world is useless without the emotional intelligence to govern it.
The master key. The absolute prerequisite for sarcasm, understatement, and banter is the ability to read the room.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, context is the blueprint of communication. Reading the room is the ability to walk into a space and instantly map the invisible social currents.
Like what kind of currents?
The hierarchy, the stress levels, the baseline intimacy between the people present. That map dictates not just how you deploy humor, but whether you are authorized to use it at all.
If we look at a practical application of this, imagine you are meeting a new client. They burst into the boardroom 10 minutes late, visibly sweating, frantically checking their watch, and they drop their briefcase, spilling files everywhere.
A nightmare scenario.
Truly. If you look at them and use our earlier deadpan line, "Well, that was graceful," you have likely just destroyed the business relationship.
Because the social currents are entirely wrong. The hierarchy is unestablished, the stress level is peaking, and there's zero baseline intimacy. The shared assumption is that this is a crisis, not an absurdity.
But take that exact same physical event, dropping the files, and place it on a Friday afternoon with a colleague you have shared an office with for 5 years. They are relaxed, you are relaxed, they drop the files. In that context, saying, "Well, that was graceful," isn't just appropriate, it is almost socially required.
The physical reality is identical. The words are identical. The only variable that changed is the invisible social current. Recognizing that current is what separates someone who merely speaks English from someone who actually communicates in it.
But this presents a massive, almost existential problem for the language learner.
It does.
How do you practice the invisible? You can drill verb conjugations with flashcards. You can practice pronunciation by recording yourself. But you cannot practice reading the room in a vacuum. Can this intuition even be deliberately developed?
It cannot be taught through active production, no. But it can be absorbed through targeted consumption. And this is the most actionable, counterintuitive takeaway for anyone trying to master this. When learners hit a plateau, their instinct is to speak more, to force themselves into conversations.
Which makes sense logically. Practice makes perfect.
Right. But to master banter, you must actually speak less and listen differently.
The directive from our source clinic is to consume specific types of media. Things like late-night talk shows, British panel shows, unscripted dry comedy, environments where banter is the primary currency. But it is not about what they are saying.
Exactly. If you watch a panel show to understand the jokes, you are focusing on the wrong layer. You must explicitly ignore the plot, the subject matter, and even the punchlines. You need to strip away the semantic meaning and listen exclusively to the acoustic signatures.
It's like tuning a highly sensitive instrument. You are watching for the disconnect between the visual data and the audio reaction.
Yes. Notice the exact moment the audience erupts into laughter, when the comedian hasn't moved a single facial muscle. Rewind that moment. Close your eyes. What did their voice do?
Because it's not totally flat, is it?
No, sarcasm and deadpan are not entirely emotionless. They have microscopic acoustic tells. A slight flattening of the vowel sounds, a millisecond pause before the final clause, a very specific, unnatural drop in pitch at the end of a sentence.
You are literally building an internal database of acoustic patterns. You are downloading the rhythm of banter.
You have to train your auditory cortex to recognize the sound of irony before your prefrontal cortex can ever hope to formulate it. When you immerse yourself in these acoustic signatures, you move from conscious, exhausting translation to unconscious, intuitive recognition.
So it becomes automatic.
Eventually, yes. When you're in a real conversation, your brain doesn't have to calculate how to sound sarcastic. It just knows what sarcasm feels like in the mouth.
It is about moving from the explicit to the implicit, from the sheet music to the jazz club.
Exactly.
So let's map the journey we have taken today. We started by validating the very real psychological sting of the missed joke, exploring how humor operates as a gatekeeper of social belonging.
We dissected the mechanics of deadpan, where the comedy is generated entirely by the friction between a chaotic reality and an emotionless delivery. We unpacked understatement as an invitation to cognitive collusion, forcing the listener to connect the dots and share the reward.
We looked at the immense, high-speed cognitive load of conversational tennis and the paradoxical nature of banter using mock hostility to prove genuine affection.
And we examined the linguistic circuit breakers, like facetious, used to de-escalate tension when you cross the line.
And finally, we grounded all of these tools in the foundational skill of reading the room, emphasizing that targeted acoustic consumption is the only way to build the intuition required to deploy them.
It is an incredibly complex ecosystem, but breaking down the hidden mechanics is the first step toward true mastery.
And to take that first step, I want to leave you with a specific mental challenge based on today's dive. Imagine your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere, in the pouring rain, your phone is dead, and you are stranded. It is a certified disaster.
A nightmare.
What is the most elegantly understated thing you could possibly say in that moment? I want you to genuinely practice this. Think about how to maximize the contrast between the extremity of the situation and the minimalism of your words. Play with the puzzle.
It's a brilliant exercise in reframing reality. And, as you practice navigating these deeply human nuances, this raises an important question about the future of communication.
Oh, I'm curious.
Well, we have spent this entire time unpacking how advanced conversational humor relies on split-second timing, microscopic acoustic shifts, and a vast invisible web of shared cultural assumptions.
Right.
Given the sheer density of that context, will artificial intelligence and real-time translation tools ever truly be able to translate a joke without completely ruining the punchline? Or will the ability to truly read the room remain the uniquely human final frontier?
That is such a fascinating thought. If humor requires a shared assumption of what it means to be human in a chaotic world, can an algorithm ever really be in on the joke? It is definitely something to think about the next time a piece of software tries to translate a sarcastic remark.
Absolutely.
Fluency is not just about precision, it is about play. It is supposed to be dynamic, slightly dangerous, and ultimately deeply connective. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep listening, keep analyzing the acoustics of the world around you, and we will catch you next time.